Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Must Read TV, the Skylark Bookshop Virtual Authors Series. My name is Alex George, and I'm the owner of Skylark Bookshop, which is an independent bookstore in downtown Columbia, Missouri. This is going to be the last online event of 2020 for us. And while the year has thrown us curveball after curveball, to put it mildly, one of the silver linings that we've discovered is the joy of these weekly online events. I want to take the opportunity of thanking every writer who has joined us and everybody who's tuned in, if that's the right expression, over the course of the last several months to listen and watch. As an independent bookstore, we are all about community, and we miss ours. While we can't gather in person at the shop to hear writers and poets speak, this is the next best thing, and it has been an experiment that has inspired and that has excited us. And so we're very grateful for everybody who has participated. And it seems fitting for our final event this year that we're actually doing something completely new. Strangely, and I only realized this when I was sitting down to write these very brief remarks, I realized I don't think we have actually done a poetry event yet, which seems extraordinary, but there you are. And it's fitting indeed that we should be welcoming 3 poets who are published by our friends at Persea Books. Many of you watching will know Persea's editor, Gabe Freed, and I will let him introduce these marvelous poets. So that's me. That's much quicker than usual. I usually go on for ages, but I'm done. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening, and enjoy the poetry. Gabe, over to you.
Thank you, Alex. And welcome, everyone. And thank you for being here to celebrate these 3 wonderful poets and their new books of poetry. I do miss seeing all of you in person, but I love that people can convene from all over. And I hope that's a part of this new world that we live in, that we never go back from, that there's always a way for people to join us from afar. It makes everyone feel local, and I love that. Speaking of local, I do want to thank Skylark Books. Skylark has changed life in a mid-Missouri university town since it opened, and it makes it a totally different place to be, having that kind of curated bookstore experience, and also a place that's so dedicated to poetry. When you visit Columbia and you have a chance to go into Skylark, you will see row upon row upon row of poetry, and it's part of what makes it such a special place. If you are still looking for Christmas gifts, we have 3, or Hanukkah gifts, it's the last night of Hanukkah, but or birthday gifts, or New Year's gifts. Of course, we would love if you would pick up one of these new books by one of these wonderful poets. And if you are inclined to buy it from Skylark or from your local bookstore, independent publishers like Persea have a really important relationship with independent bookstores, and especially in these times, it's so important to let them know how much we appreciate them by purchasing books from them. I also am going to keep it short. I want to say how thrilled we are at Persea, how proud we are to publish Laura Cronk and Kimberly Grey and Anne-Marie Macari. This is the 2nd book for each of them with Persea, and for Kimmy and Laura, that's both books that they've published. Anne-Marie is the author of 5 books, and we've been lucky enough to do the last 2. These books were supposed to come out earlier in the year, but like a lot of things, they were kind of waylaid by the pandemic. Now we get to celebrate them all at once, as we head towards the solstice, and so that's special in its own right. I think we those of you who know me know that I love poems that also are disguised as other things. And in looking over these 3 books today, I'm struck by how the poems in them appear as baptisms and as elegies and as interviews and as handbooks and toolkits and mantras and warnings and supplications and love letters and block parties and language lessons. They really are it's so evident in them that they are meant to be poems. And that's part of what I love about all 3 of these poets. We're going to hear from them in order, so I don't have to get up and talk to you again. I'd rather hear from them. And so I thank you again for being here, and thank the poets, and congratulate them on these new achievements.
So hi everyone, I'm Laura Cronk. I'm up first, and I'm going to be reading poems from my new book, Ghost Hour. And I just want to say I'm so proud and happy that this book found a home at Persea, and I want to thank the whole team at Persea. It's such a special press and an important press. This book has 3 sections. I'll read a few poems from each section. The first section is concerned with origin and ancestry, and the poems are mostly set in the rural central Indiana landscape where I grew up. And this first poem came about when I realized I was wrangling some children to get them to the school bus, and I realized something came out of my mouth that was not me. It was a phrase that someone else in my family must have used at some point farther back, but I was just thinking about the multitudes we carry with us in our dailiness because of our ancestry. I never know who is looking out from my eyes, sadistic German Catholic or silent Appalachian clockmaker. The sky is so blue today as I drag the neighbor boy to the bus, the onion farmer in me against the army vet in him. There's the army vet in me too. He gets things done, like taking my daughter and the neighbor boys to the bus, even if one is having a tantrum. The older children are on the bus, and I take the baby inside. There's the opera singer in him and the opera singer in me, failed, both of us. There's the gossip columnist, the one who wore furs and Shalimar, and the dairy farmers. There's the poet who had seances, and the dead who talked and talked to everyone but her. She's glad to be playing on the floor with the baby, glad to come with me now to the kitchen to make him eggs. There are the small game hunters, banjo pickers, football coach, the general manager of the factory, and the factory lineman are both here, looking into my mirror as I pin my hair and put on earrings. There's the hairdresser. There are the twins. Both were painters and stopped painting at the same time when one of them died. There's the other pair of twins, alto and soprano. They're arguing about my outfit, but I don't have time to change. I just have to go. I put on my coat, say goodbye to my son and the neighbor who came over to watch him. The onion farmer's vicious wife is putting on my gloves. They're the ones who played ice hockey, but they're not helping. It's so cold. This unending winter might break me. Now I'm inhabited by a whole group of the good-for-nothing ones with their sidelong looks and wispy hair, delicate, who never made their mark or even had a trade. Every day we leave together. They walk me to the train. And now I'm gonna start my timer, which I forgot to do a moment ago, and read one more poem called Ancestry that's a bit darker. Ancestry. If the quiet Appalachian clockmaker, if his friends, if their pastor and their wives, if his wife, if it didn't need to be hidden, if the clockmaker, I resisted knowing. It's true even though, if he was the gentle one, if his children, if he held them easily, if his rough hand smoothed their hair, if before he left, he tossed them in the air. if the twins with their two minds sent something impure, if they didn't, if his shirt was freshly pressed, if his shoes were shined, if he only had one pair of shoes, if his walking down the steps and onto the street and gathering with the others, if flowing toward the church basement, if changing there, putting on hoods and robes, if the town turned out, if they clapped and cheered and ate sweets, if he marched with the others ghostly but unbothered, if everyone there, unhooded in plain sight, was unbothered too, if they all knew anyway who each man was in each hood by his shoes, if that's where I'm from and who, if what was taught at school was dismissed outside, if the chasm was just left there open and like other adult things made no sense, if my grandfather, the kind one, the gentle one, if he marched, if he didn't disagree, if his thoughts were the rope and the tree, if I was raised to protect the rope and the tree. And I'll read one more poem from this section, Yellow Wildflower. I can eat as much as a big man, wiry stems scarf up sunlight, roots muscle through dirt getting at water. If I could walk, I would run. Instead, I shoot up starburst buds and pinwheels of thick yellow behind each bloom that's going white at the edges, about to look nibbled or crumpled or done. There's another spiky ball ready. If I could walk, I would never sit down. I stand straight, pixie cut, ruffled in the wind. There's no swaying. There's no lolling a lush peony head toward all I want, hinting hard. If I'm hungry, I say it. I eat and grow. I dare you to scan this meadow and tell me you're not thinking yellow, yellow, yellow. And now I'm going to read from a long poem that makes up the center section of the book. This began as an essay, and it wanted to be a poem. And this is set in the mid-90s in the kind of rural industrial town where I'm from, which I realize is a very hard place to come out. And this is a love poem set against that difficulty. As made. We were made for each other. God gave a little shrug, star-crossed, crossed again, double-crossed. The black galaxy touched clumps of dirt, creaking there. On one day of each generation, going back endlessly, we married. You wore a dark suit each time. We slept on a bed of gravel, glass, sticks, nails. A poem is private. No one reads a poem, but someone in trouble. We met at 12, two kids who seemed the least in trouble of any kids anyone knew. I recognized you. It doesn't matter what play it was, just that there was a backstage. We met in that good dream. I closed the doors of the family car, crossed the school parking lot, and walked right into it. The place between imagination and waking life that was familiar. It was a whole world in darkness, pools of light buzzing against the wood and concrete and mirrors of backstage, street lamps for an underworld, other world, a place where there's friendship but no street clothes, where there's work to be done in the dark. That art existed where we were, small industrial town, island in a sea of bean fields and cornfields, communal art at that. Meant there was some kind of God who knew us and loved us. We were friends and our friends were all friends. You were funny and nerdy and athletic and cute. We went bowling, went to the movies. We joined everything all together, not just community theater, but science club, the speech team, youth groups, marching band. We learned crisis mediation and agreed to be called to the office if anyone was in trouble. Surely the last thing kids publicly in trouble would want is another kid there to help. But we were ready to help, ready to work. Anything dorky, artistic, spiritual, altruistic had a roster with our names on it. My name was there and yours alphabetically, just after mine. Our young selves are gone as much as anyone or anything that has ever lived is gone, which is to say, never over. We went on dates as friends and then as chastest boyfriend, girlfriend. We watched Legends of the Fall at the Castle Theater. I couldn't pull myself together at the end. Teenaged feelings unleashed at the tragic final scene. And you know the electricity of two people sitting together in a theater who haven't yet really touched. There was some of that, but the fizzing and sparks, not between you and me, but between you and me and gorgeous young Brad Pitt, moody and doomed in a landscape we recognized. We were made of bits of opal, corn silk, malachite, cave mud, the wine red interior fabric of an old Chevette. You worked harder than me. You wanted to be taken seriously. You wanted children, a career. You wanted a dignified life. I wanted to do well enough to be put in the smart kid classes where the conversations were good. This is my story of our story of being young and the disaster we averted. There was Mary Todd and Abraham, Franklin and Eleanor, and I wanted you to lie. Your parents wanted you to lie. Your church wanted you to lie. There was a friend you had from the swim team. Did you appreciate, as I did when I sat behind him in math class, the clean syllables of his name and the way he smiled so easily and hardly spoke? You both smelled like chlorine all the time. You went hunting together. Your parents helped you roast the squirrels you brought back. Even though we lived where we lived, it was a novelty. We were a generation out from the real squirrel hunters. But you got to be out in the woods with a beautiful, quiet boy. There was that. Am I getting any of this right? You tried to come out to me. I couldn't hear. I could see, though, the way you changed when someone new moved to town. He was the first person any of us met who, undeniably, he was homeschooled from a conservative Christian family, soft-spoken and lovely and odd. Odd because of being homeschooled. You didn't think he was odd at all. When he was near, your face softened, you oriented yourself toward him, a plant in the presence of sun. Am I getting any of this right at all? To get it wrong, we're both alive, but this is an elegy, and getting any kind of elegy wrong, what's worse than that? Senior year marching band, white and Kelly green military uniforms, hat with plumes. Our teacher chose esoteric experimental music like we were a professional drum corps, not a pep band. You were drum major. It was the year the show opened with a French horn solo. A French horn solo. In the blind audition, Amanda and I played over and over. We stood shaking, reassuring each other. Each time our teacher said again, I pictured the notes lifting and flying, imagined their shapes as they flew across the humid football field. I wasn't the most exact, but I got the tone. The other thing was you. I was sending the notes to you. I got the part. And every rehearsal and every show began with the two of us. You looked at me and held out your hands. Now, I sent the most perfect, mournful notes I could. Here. We were cast as Elizabeth and John Proctor in the fall play, probably at least somewhat believable as a long married couple tormented by a secret and misguided neighbors. There was the feeling of impossible love. There was love, but it wasn't possible. I found out you carved in your desk your freshman year at college in Latin. It's not my fault. I can imagine you learning a whole dead language to be able to write just that. I'm holding my girlhood in my hands. I see your face as it was then, cute and queer and perfect. You saved us. I never told you that I was grateful. We are what's written in the dust on the hood of the old Chevette. And I'm just going to read a couple of poems from the last section of the book. So these are poems set in contemporary adulthood. They're mostly set in urban spaces. Shout out to my Jersey City friends. And there are some tarot poems and other experiments and some love poems. So I'll just read a few. Here's a tarot poem. Rest. I wish I was a priest. I wish I wore buffalo horns and an ivory orb as a mitre on my head. High holidays and times of despair, what to do and more importantly, what to wear decided. Unyieldingly glam, form untraceable beneath the pooling blue. I wish I had that far off look, holding up a white flag to the crazed fertility, coming between me and the great pure ocean. And here's a love poem. on choosing you. You brought love letters from other loves, records of overdraft, furniture found on the street. You brought unsophisticated drawings you made in charcoal, and that wasn't enough. You brought pages of your musings, recordings of your voice. You realized your mistake and brought bundles of sheets washed and folded tight, platters of roast chicken, hand cream, sweets. You sang and your voice gave out. You started a fight. You caught my eye while you were looking mournful. Late at night, after walking together, you gave me a single photo of you in the future, very old. You dreamt you were a fish, and you told me about it, and I could see it all so clearly. And I'll read one final poem. Thank you so much, everyone. It's such an honor to be reading with these two poets I admire so much. What poems are. If poems begin with hand-wringing or flying, then what are poems? To be a witch, you have to feel it. You have to leave your head, put yourself in someone else's hands. What poets have said, we're all a little bit necrophiliac. We're all a little bit off. I've read poetry and studied poems, but I can never remember what a poem is or how to make a poem. You collage it and fake it, lost in grief. You make it with black silk. It's like sewing, it's like cooking, it's like painting, it's like talking. Poems fan the fire, are the fire, hold the water, vanish in the steam and smoke. I've seen them. They walk on manly legs into the world and then suddenly scale a tree, skirts trailing down. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that beautiful reading, Laura. I love that last poem so much. Laura, you're still on my screen, but is this like normal for me? Like, am I seen and heard? I just want to make sure it's working. We good, Gabe? Okay. Thank you so much, Laura, for that beautiful reading. I'm really excited to be reading with you and Anne-Marie. And thank you to Alex and Skylark Bookshop for hosting us tonight. Obviously, these are weird times. We can't have our traditional readings. And it's really weird to have these virtual readings. And I'm actually usually not nervous, but seeing people from every community I've been a part of, every institution I've been a part of, teachers and students and extended family members and friends and colleagues. It's really kind of amazing to see that all in the same room here, which would not really happen in any other context. So a huge thank you to Gabe Freed for being our editor and for ushering our books into the world in the middle of a pandemic, and for setting this reading up for us tonight. I'm going to read 5 poems from my second book, Systems for the Future of Feeling. I'm very excited about the cover art that Gabe got for me by, on a whim, emailing the Hilma af Klint Foundation in Sweden. And they gave us permission to use one of her paintings, and I am still in love with it. Very excited. So I'm going to read 5 poems, and then I'm actually going to read, if you don't mind, one quick, very short essay from my third book that is in progress. I started writing this book in 2012, and it is really weird how relevant a lot of these poems feel to this weird year we've had. And yeah, I started writing language systems, poems that use patterns of repetition and other kind of visual patterns to kind of create meaning. And I'm going to read a couple of those. This is System for After, and I use the German word for light in it, Licht. Even happenstance, even if we were differently young, even at home after the reaching, the glance, even after we were in the business of after, even when it's heavy and hurts, even when we could pair it with now, even if there was a boat I could take back to you, even if the hothouse resembles the world in its inability to calm down, licked, 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 even enough of it now. How do you say bursting in every language? Even I don't know it. Even if we love memory, even if we use it as a way to devotion. The future hasn't happened yet, but still it is happening, even when it tries not to. Curiosity happens faster. Devotion is a cricket song, even when it's not. Even when we dragged it around like a block of light, just to see if it lasted. Even when it breaks, even when we know it will break. Let's be shocked after. This is a difficult system. For those of you who are at my reading, I was very lucky to read with Ann Carson last week, which was a dream. And I read a couple of these poems last week, so apologies if you've already heard it. A difficult system. I love a man who is difficult to love. The way a horse is difficult to ride when the horse is a man. Or when you don't stroke him enough, or you do, but you stroke him wrongly and you don't love him completely. I love the difficulty of loving a man incompletely. His blue, his black, his back, I have not mounted enough. It's hard. The body is difficult, even the horse's body. Its muscled frame always galloping away. Its mane, the main reason I mean is to stay, to hold on. They're hard to know the difference between. I could say that loving a man is an easy task. I could say the man and I are beautiful like two horses in the earliest blurry light. Always love is useless. Or the horses, because you don't know how to ride it, and it can't run fast enough, or it runs too fast, and there you are standing alone in a field as it rushes past you. Let's not mistake what's difficult here. The man. The manner of loving him, or leaving him, or believing him, that his body wants to be had easily by your body, and not by any body that can be simply had. I love a man who is difficult to love the way a man is difficult to love. The way a horse that is running keeps on running, so you will hold it harder. So hold it harder. Its continuously difficult body. Then go on loving him, easily as hard. The weird thing about virtual readings is people like text you and message you and email you while you're reading, which is wonderful. And you have to also look at yourself, which is weird. I've actually, in this book, experimented writing some shorter poems, which it was new for me, and I found it really exciting to do that. So this is one of the very short poems in the book. It's called If You Need Meaning. In the ever morning, meaning is determined by light. It is ever, the meaning. Meaning you have a lifetime to figure it out when the light's out, or when the ever is out of the light. People who are close to me know that I've been estranged from my family of origin for almost 6 years, which is the topic of my third book. And there's only one poem in this book that is about that subject. It's called Family System. That we are eased often into and from each other means we have options. Like the body easily deciding when it loves and when it unloves, an estuary of sorts. It becomes source-like, where all things run. It's so much like that. Anyone who has a body knows, perhaps it's for geographical reasons. We go and it's rampant toward the thing that unwants us. In fact, I demonstrated it. Once in a house where nothing loved me, I loved everything back. It was astonishing. The furniture curled against backbones And those people didn't know. Those people didn't know what to do. So together we suffered with a yellowing ease. Even the trees outside were quiet. I estimate that's all it took, a day, maybe longer, to become like an erasure. They erased me from that house, held the curtains open wider until the light unshaped my love, not shockingly, into something harder. This is the last poem I'm going to read from Systems, and then I'm going to read that short essay. I had a lot of fun writing the system poems in this book. A lot of the other poems, there are other poems in here, are not readable at a reading. They're kind of experimental and weird, so I end up reading a lot of the same poems over and over again. This is one I have not read very much. It is a poem, I was trying to write a system for grief, and it was a poem that never kind of happened for me. And it wasn't until I allowed the syntax to be chaotic and to not force kind of grammatical convention on the poem that the language really felt like it mirrored how grief feels. So this is called No System for Grief. You were in the world, and more slowly now, I am so fasted now, so long it's been without you. If you ever read this, you were what I was dreaming of, this welt, to know it before. It comes like love. I loved your empty spaces, saved them a little light. The sea, it's dying, believe me. Long ago today, I was fond of saying time is just wandering away. You heard me once say, I am the lost, shiny thing you were. Designed for this decade, jumped hoops to get me. And picture it, got through. But not this. I am not through, and I will not miss this big sadness or how I heard your body break into such fragments toward what bewilder meant. And I'm just going to read, this is a very quick, I would call it a micro essay. It's just about a page, and it's from my third book, A Mother as an Intellectual Thing. As I said before, I've been estranged from my mother and almost all of my siblings for about 6 years, almost 6 years. This is my first time ever reading anything from this book out loud. So there was a lot of trauma that comes with being dislocated from your family, and that's kind of the basis of this book. So I do a lot with trauma theory and narrative theory, and thinking about the way we kind of reconstruct a trauma story in our minds as we're processing it, but also the way that trauma inherently deconstructs the self before you reconstruct yourself and become basically a completely new person after it. So that's kind of the basis of this piece. It's called Deconstruction. I thought I could stop time by taking it apart, something Derridian. Time reconstructed as a story, beginning, middle, and end. An end to the pain. I wanted to find it. When summer begins one June, I drive the New York Thruway upstate to a lake, a large lake surrounded by trees. The water glows from the sun's rays, and when I dive beneath the surface, I enter a different world. I cannot stay below, I know, but while underneath, I feel an odd keeping. Does the water want me, or do I want it? I think to myself. I circle my arms to try and grasp it, an impossibility. But in this moment, I think if I never come up, the pain cannot have me, that I would be able to eschew it, remain in perpetual baptism. Eventually, I give in to breath. Elaine Scarry says pain is the absolute definer of reality, that its experience is purely singular. Whatever pain achieves, she claims, it achieves in part through its unshareability. She's referring to physical or mental pain, or both. Trauma ravages the body. The spine becomes a stake in you. It holds you up, yes, but the nerves dotted up and down it burn like thousands of little fires. Your chest carries on it the heavy material of the past. Once, a few years back, I went to the doctor, sure I had a tumor in my ear. The pain was unbearable and I was having trouble hearing. She looked at me, sternness in her eyes, and said, "You must stop clenching your teeth when you sleep. The jaw is the most important hinge in the body, one you need to keep. In water, you can be all mind. The body can disappear in its weightlessness and with it the pain. When I tell a friend going through a trauma that she should start swimming, she asks if the muddled underwater world only exacerbates the brain's thinking. Without sound, doesn't your mind become louder, she asked. No, I explained. The world becomes a mere echo, and it is so distant. It is like Derrida's trace, a track or path toward or away from, an absent presence. And in it, your body becomes so bodiless, so estranged from its own knowability, that you can imagine the pain leaking out of you, washed of you, going. But that is just your imagination, she said. Pain is never imaginary, but it is not, as Scarry also claims, an object. You cannot throw it like a stone toward the sun, smash it in your hands, or leave it on a highway road. She uses variables to outline this logic. Desire is desire of X, fear is fear of Y, hunger is hunger for Z, but pain is not of or for anything. It is itself alone. Maybe I've made a mistake. Maybe I'm trying to unmake a thing that you simply can't unmake. Pain equals pain, I thought, when I finally lifted my body from that lake. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay. I hope you can see me. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Kim, and thanks, Laura, for beautiful, moving readings. And thanks to Persea for giving me a home for my books. It's wonderful to read like this instead of being isolated as we all are. I know for me, readings have been a wonderful lifeline. And I see people from California and Arizona and Texas, and thank you. I also want to say thank you. Can you see the cover of my book? Everybody's asked about it, and Martha Posner's work is Martha Posner is the artist whose work is on the book. The photograph is by the great Larry Fink. Martha is an incredible artist. Look her up. And I'm just so grateful that she allowed me to use this. So I'm going to start. I'm not going to say a whole lot. Let's see, what time it is, 8:41. Okay. It's very strange to have a book come out during a pandemic, but everything is strange. Boats can take you. Now I know that nothing is closed. Boats can take you through a ravine, then out where oily weeds and plastic bags, cast-offs. I sit in the sun. I don't know why this earth, why my body, why daylight, why bridge and its shadow over water, a shore where bird prints get lost in the slap of river. They repeat, but they're not the same. I know less than when I was young, when the net rippled and wet held me. Now myself less, my mouth and eyes less. This time of year, trees bud out abundantly brief, pink and white wafers raining down. They are boats sinking into earth, dissolving, conducting the black vein of cosmos, black vein that repeats but is never the same. I hear sounds the petals make in dirt, the dogwood's hard birthing, watery vortexes. I hear myself breathing behind a far off door. Florida. Sharp sawgrass for miles, pockets of willow, and in the shallows, ibis and heron wading gluey water. Finally, I'm really breathing, first time since the day you stopped walking, sitting in your blue robe, cashmere throw tucked over your legs, our only mantra, body, body, body. Someone pricking your finger for blood, studying your swollen feet, asking you what year, what month. Beneath the surface, rot bubbles up through rain-soaked muck, all this water on the move, filtered through algae, unending sedge. Shouldn't I have wondered, soul, when you looked at me confused, haloed by your milk hair? I want to travel with you through the endangered landscape into the haunted reeds, alarmed flocks against the light, the wild scattering. So, most of us have sat in hospital rooms with somebody who's very ill or dying. And I thought I'd read this. I know right now a lot of people can't sit in hospital rooms with people. And if you've done that, there's a certain feeling to it. I can't think of the word. My brain isn't working. Bow down to the hospital bed, to the sleeper, his mouth open wide. Bow to breath uneven, to the deaf man on the curtain's other side. Bow to a fear of tight blankets, pills, needles, blood, buzzing ceiling, metallic glare. Here, in this processing center, clear fluids in plastic tubes. Bow down to limbo's white light, quiet feet down the hall, passing through. And of course, the word I was looking for was vigil. So somebody, I think Laura or Kim or Laura said that, I think it was Kim, said that the poems that she wrote could have been written now. And many of these poems feel like they might have been written during the pandemic, but they weren't. And this one in particular called The Room. Tonight, snow intermittent, flakes flat as ash or anything broken and raining down, volcanic, atomic. I move through midnight, then 2 a.m., books stacked, my glass of water. Behind clouds, a white blur, the ghost ship half sunk or half risen, riding quiet to the other side. Awake within my walls, I'm as alone as I long to be, in the complete, in the nothing that carries me, drifts me. Book, drown me. Water, dream me. Table, knock me. Lamp, flame me. I'm yours now. Lost witness, forgotten blessing. So this next poem, I actually wrote it, began to write it the day after the election in 2016. And it's about a trip I took with my children and a dear friend of mine. I couldn't see. Clouds layered and lit, sailing above the tops of buildings the way herds must have passed across plains, owning the earth when all wild was wild, and we were herds ourselves. Last summer, hiking up north, we broke off twigs with clusters of blueberries and grazed as we walked, bringing branches near our mouths, pulling fruit off with our teeth. And I felt young again in the old forest and felt old, having carried these memories across the sprawling continent, seeking trees and open water, finding animals in their rightful homes. Since the loss, I'm unwinding the wire wrapped around my body. I couldn't see it. I hurt everywhere, hard to breathe, to sleep, hard to move through the saturated air. Rising, we skirted warm bear scat, passing trees older than ourselves, climbing extinction's ridge to where the view opened through spruce and hemlock, the forest shifting, moving around beyond us. I called to you and you answered. Grass is as far as I can see. Excuse me. Grasses as far as I can see, sloped like a body, long with a fertile back. Is that death out there in a wheat-colored gown whose hide was beaten near enough to paper? I called, and something just ran out of my body, out of not just my mouth, more than my mouth, as if a tongue could stretch a billowy scarf in wind and a voice would follow, rolling out as far as I could see, could hear. I called to you, and somehow, voiceless, you answered, like the mandibles deep in grass and the grass deep in contemplation, and contemplation something living. Remember when we were alive, you asked in my mind. And you laughed and I laughed at the same time, because what did that mean when we were alive? You wanted our voices to meet out there. You said, I'm trying to find out where I am. Okay, just a couple more. So the title of this poem is I Feel the Need of a Deeper Baptism. There's several poems with that title in the book. I'll just read the last one. And some of these poems, including this one, the titles come from Shaker Spirituals. I feel the need of a deeper baptism, to slip into a slice of ground, to turn over my tongue in dirt, to be in holy ground. Bring elements, iron, tin, bring stalks without their braids, for ruts where fog sinks and insects lay white eggs. I want to be unseen, to study without light, no speaking till I've swallowed dirt. Fall down, by loam baptized, where feet of animals pass. I'm dreaming now of ditches, pits, closets, holes, voids. And one last poem. And thank you all again. We will all go home with you. As a child, picking through blackberry thickets, through underbrush and thorns, I thought we were all together, but you weren't born. I filled a pail with fruit, scratched my arms in that dense, and stopped to place a black orb on my tongue. Far into time, my mouth like a place of sight and a purple black unrolling inside, I heard the door while trees leaned overhead. We will all go home with you through brambles and weeds. That is what they said. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to Gabe and Alex.
I'm clapping on behalf of everyone. This is such a gift in this time to hear the three of you read, and to have all of us come together like this. As strange as it is not to be in the same place, it's also such more than solace, more than commiseration. It is such a boon to be together like this, and to have so many people come together to listen to poems, and to listen to poems that are about being in the way that these poems are. And this is Linda Business, and she's excited to be here too. It's really astonishing. This is a great gift to have the three of you here, and thank you so much. And we all wish your new books the best lives, and that you have the best lives with them. And we're happy to be along for the ride.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Anne-Marie, Gabe, Alex. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
It's amazing to see everyone here and to be together.
Congratulations on your books.
You as well. If anybody is still here, if you want to order one of the books, please order it from Skylark Bookshop or directly from Persea Books.
The link is in the chat for Skylark, but you can also just go to their website. Yes, I would urge you, even away from our site and to Skylark, for buying books from this reading. They're generous to host and to spend the time arranging everything, and they're wonderful partners in publishing.
Okay.
Thank you, you three, for reading. That was really wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabe.
Thanks, Gabe.
All right.